At 12 years old, Tom Jones was told he might never sing again, not as a warning, not as advice, but as a medical order. He was locked inside a small bedroom in Pontypridd, Wales, while other boys ran free outside. His crime wasn't rebellion. It was illness, tuberculosis, a disease that terrified Britain in the early 1950s, and one that turned a child's world into a silent prison. For 2 full years, that room became his entire universe. No school, no friends, no voice. The window stayed open even in winter, flooding the room with cold air in the name of recovery. Blankets replaced movement. Silence replaced childhood. And every night Tom lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of life continuing without him. Before that room, his life had already been narrow. Tom Jones was born Thomas John Woodward on June 7, 1940, in a coal mining town where men disappeared underground before sunrise and came back broken after dark. His father worked brutal 12-hour shifts in the Rhondda Valley mines, bringing home coal dust and exhaustion, rarely comfort. Money was always short, space was tighter. Young Tommy shared beds with siblings, wore hand-me-down clothes, and learned early that survival mattered more than dreams. Music was never encouraged. It was tolerated at best. Then illness stripped away even that. During the first year of confinement, doctors forbade him from singing. For a boy who already clung to music as his only sense of identity, the order felt like punishment. But Tom adapted the only way he knew how. He listened. Late at night, when the house fell quiet, he tuned into the BBC radio. American blues, rhythm and blues. Voices soaked in pain and longing. Big Bill Broonzy sounds that carried more truth than anything he'd heard at school. Those voices didn't just keep him company, they rewired him. His mother bought one of the first televisions in the Vere neighborhood, while others gathered for novelty. Tom studied performance, faces, movement, control. When he wasn't listening, he drew, sketching the world he couldn't touch, imagining himself somewhere beyond the walls closing in around him. By the time doctors finally allowed him to sing again, his body had changed. So had his voice. The illness had deepened it, roughened it, turned a boy's tone into something older, heavier, a baritone that sounded lived in before life had even begun. Years later, Tom would call it a strange gift, a voice carved by sickness, not training. But school didn't celebrate gifts like that. Reading came slowly. Writing felt impossible. Teachers labeled him lazy, unmotivated, difficult. No one recognized dyslexia. Then they only saw a boy who didn't fit. So Tom stopped trying to fit. Music didn't ask him to read. Music didn't humiliate him. Music gave him space. He sang hymns at school, sang at family gatherings. Discovered that when he opened his mouth, people listened, not politely, instinctively. By 14, he was slipping into local pubs, standing in smoke-filled corners, and singing Hank Williams songs for tips. The rooms were rough, the audiences unforgiving, but they taught him what classrooms never could: how to command attention, how to hold silence, how to survive rejection. One Christmas, he earned more singing alone than groups of children did caroling together. For the first time, his voice paid him back. At 16, he walked away from school for good. By day, he carried bricks as a builder's laborer, sold vacuum cleaners door to door, took any job that paid. His first real wage barely kept him alive. By night, he sang. That rhythm, exhaustion, and hope became his normal. Then life forced him to grow up overnight. He met Melinda Trenchard when they were children. By 16, she was pregnant. They married in 1957 in a quiet registry office, a ceremony that reflected their reality more than romance. 5 months later, their son Mark was born. Tom was 17, a husband, a father with no safety net.
To survive, he took a job at a rubber factory, gluing belts for 12 hours a day in heat and choking air. He came home drained, then went back out to sing at night. Sleep became optional. Responsibility was not. His health suffered. Fear kept him moving. Music was no longer a dream. It was escape. What Tom Jones didn't yet understand was that the same voice that saved him from poverty and illness would eventually drag him into a world of temptation, excess, and self-destruction. And once he stepped into it, there would be no easy way back. By the early 1960s, Tom Jones was running on fumes. By day, he worked until his hands burned. By night, he sang like a man chasing oxygen. Factory life was killing him slowly, and he knew it. Then fate arrived without warning, wearing the face of a man who saw something no one else had dared to believe. In 1963, Tom was still known as Tommy Woodward, singing with his band at a youth club in Pontypridd. It was just another night, another crowd, another attempt to escape a life already closing in. That's when Gordon Mills walked in. Mills was a former boxer trying to break into the music business. He had no empire, no power, no guarantees. But the moment Tom opened his mouth, Mills froze. He later said it felt like being hit in the chest. This wasn't just a good voice, it was a weapon. Mills decided on the spot. This man is leaving Wales. Within weeks, he changed everything. The band's name, their direction, and most importantly, Tom's identity. Tommy Woodward sounded local, disposable. Tom Jones sounded dangerous. They borrowed a battered van and drove to London, a city that chewed up singers daily and spat them out forgotten. But Mills didn't negotiate from fear. He pushed loudly, relentlessly. On January 1st, 1964, Tom landed a Decca record session. The song Chills and Fever impressed executives, but didn't chart. Some said Tom was too raw, too sexual, too much. In the polite British pop scene of the time, he didn't fit the mold. Mills refused to slow him down. Instead, he leaned in. Sharper suits, tighter control, a stage presence that didn't apologize. Tom wasn't trained to behave. He was trained to survive, and it showed. Then on November 11th, 1964, everything snapped into place. A singer dropped out of session at the last minute. Tom was called in as a replacement. The song was It's Not Unusual. The recording was rushed. The energy uncontrolled. Near the end, Tom let out a spontaneous whoa. A sound that wasn't planned, rehearsed, or approved. It changed everything. Pirate radio stations grabbed it instantly. Decca followed the noise. By January 1965, the song hit #1 in the UK. Within weeks, it climbed the US charts. In just months, it sold over 1 million copies worldwide. Tom Jones didn't rise slowly. He exploded. By April 1965, he stood on the Ed Sullivan Show, watched by 28 million Americans. For many, it was their first time seeing him. The hips, the intensity, the restless energy. Some were outraged, others were hypnotized. While British pop stars played safe, Tom Jones looked like he was daring the audience to keep up. Within 6 months, he went from unknown factory worker to international sensation. The industry scrambled. Then came another turn, one that pushed him beyond pop and into legend. In 1965, Burt Bacharach personally asked Tom to sing the theme for What's New Pussycat? The Abbey Road session was chaos. 5 pianos, conflicting tempos. Nothing lined up. Instead of fixing it, Bacharach kept it. The mess became the sound. The song climbed charts on both sides of the Atlantic. Tom earned a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist in 1966, a shocking achievement for someone dismissed months earlier as too much. Ironically, Tom hated the song at first. He thought it was too light for his voice. Bacharach insisted it would define the moment. He was right. Then Tom leaned into something darker. In 1966, Green Grass of Home arrived, a prison narrative disguised as nostalgia. Tom sang it like a confession. Listeners wept. Radio stations received calls asking if he was actually incarcerated. The song dominated the UK charts for 7 weeks and sold millions worldwide. It proved something unexpected. Tragedy could rule pop music. By 1967, Las Vegas came calling. Tom headlined the Flamingo Hotel, earning $25,000 a week, staggering money for the time. Crowd screamed. Women threw underwear onto the stage. Security escorted him out after shows to protect him from the chaos. Frank Sinatra noticed. He watched Tom perform and gave him advice that stuck. Own the stage like it belongs to you. That summer, Tom broke attendance records for non-American acts in Vegas. 22 sold-out shows. The Welsh factory worker had become a Vegas king. Then Delilah arrived in 1968, inspired by a real murder case. The song was violent, jealous, explosive. During a live BBC performance, Tom smashed a guitar on stage. Unplanned, raw, disturbing. The press went wild. The single sold over 2 million copies and became inseparable from his image. By 1969, Tom Jones wasn't just a singer. He was a weekly event. This is Tom Jones launched on American television, pulling up to 20 million viewers per episode. Legends lined up to appear. His charisma filled living rooms across the world. Money followed, power followed, and quietly something else followed too. Temptation, excess, a hunger that success only made louder. Because while Tom Jones had escaped poverty, he was about to enter a world that would demand a much higher price. Las Vegas didn't just welcome Tom Jones, it fed him. Night after night, the lights never dimmed. The applause never cooled, and the rules that existed everywhere else simply didn't apply here. This was a city built on excess, and Tom Jones became its perfect product. By the early 1970s, he wasn't just performing in Vegas, he owned it at Caesar's Palace and the Flamingo. Tom commanded fees that bordered on unreal. By 1972, he was reportedly earning close to $100,000 a week, more than most performers made in a year. His shows sold out instantly. Women screamed his name before he even stepped on stage. And when he did, they threw panties, room keys, notes promising anything he wanted. Security had to escort him out through back corridors after every show. Not for privacy, for survival. Tom Jones had become a fantasy, and fantasies don't say no. Behind the curtain, a system formed around him, a rhythm, a routine. Venues quietly prepared dedicated rooms for women waiting backstage. What started as temptation became expectation, then entitlement. Tom later admitted he slept with hundreds of women a year. At the time, he didn't see it as destruction. He saw it as proof. Proof that the poor boy from Wales had beaten the world. Elvis Presley noticed. The two men bonded in Vegas. Late nights, poker games, champagne that never stopped flowing. Elvis gifted Tom a custom robe. They talked until sunrise about fame, fear, and the weight of being watched. It felt like brotherhood. It was also a warning neither of them fully heard because the higher Tom climbed, the less grounded he became. On stage, his performances leaned heavier into sexuality. Longer stares, slower movements, a deliberate tension that pulled audiences in and blurred boundaries. Fans didn't just adore him, they consumed him. While the crowd celebrated, something inside his personal life was quietly unraveling. Linda, the girl who married him at 16, watched the headlines grow sharper, the rumors louder. She had stood beside him through illness, poverty, exhaustion. Now she stood beside him while the world tried to take him apart. The most dangerous temptation arrived wearing a crown. In 1973, Tom met Marjorie Wallace, the newly crowned Miss World. She was 19. He was in his 30s. Their affair exploded into public view almost instantly. Photographed, documented, whispered about in every corner of the press. The fallout was brutal. Marjorie lost her Miss World title. Her career stalled overnight. And then tragedy struck when her fiancé, racing driver Peter Revson, died in a crash the same year. The tabloids didn't separate the stories. They tied everything together. Tom Jones became part of a narrative of destruction. To fans, it still felt glamorous. To his family, it felt like a slow-motion collapse. By 1975, the mood had shifted. The same crowds that once screamed his name started watching more closely. Admiration began to rot into judgment. Rumors of backstage behavior of secret rooms and endless affairs spread faster than the music. And then came a night no one forgot. October 27th, 1975. Las Vegas Hilton. Tom stepped onto the stage in a sequin jumpsuit, ready to debut a new ballad called Darlin'. Over 2,000 fans sat waiting, but not for something new. Minutes in, the room turned. Booing echoed through the hall. Shouts cut through the music. Drinks flew toward the stage. Someone screamed, "Go home." Security rushed forward mid-song. Tom Jones was dragged off the stage. Not after the show, not during applause, but in humiliation. The crowd celebrated like they'd won. For the first time since escaping poverty, Tom Jones wasn't rejected by critics or executives. He was rejected by the people who made him, and it shattered him. He canceled all performances for 6 months, locked himself inside his Los Angeles mansion, chain-smoked, replayed footage of the night over and over. He told his manager, Gordon Mills, something that sounded impossible coming from a man like him. It feels like the end. But the deeper truth was even harder to face. The boos weren't about a song. They were about everything. The lifestyle, the rumors, the betrayals. And the one person who had absorbed it all for nearly 20 years finally broke. When Linda confronted him about the affair with Marjorie Wallace, the argument turned violent. She punched him hard enough to leave him bloodied, shaken, silent for the first time. Tom Jones wasn't in control of the room. The charming image, the untouchable legend, the fantasy man. All of it cracked at once. Las Vegas had given him everything, and now it was taking payment. What came next wasn't collapse. Not yet. It was something slower, more painful. A long, uncertain road back where survival would mean becoming someone entirely different. When Tom Jones disappeared after the Vegas humiliation, the industry didn't panic. It moved on. That was the real shock. In the late 1970s, music changed fast. Disco rose. Punk exploded. Faces once considered immortal were suddenly replaceable. And for the first time since escaping the factory floor, Tom Jones felt something colder than failure. Irrelevance. He returned to the stage cautiously, but the atmosphere had shifted. The hunger was still there. The voice was still powerful. Yet something intangible was gone. Trust. Audiences watched him differently now. Not with desire, with memory. Through the late 1970s and early 1980s, Tom kept working, but the hits slowed. Radio no longer chased him. Television booked him as nostalgia, not urgency. The man who once shattered expectations now struggled to reset them. Then, in 1986, the ground beneath him collapsed again. Gordon Mills, the man who had pulled him out of Wales, renamed him, protected him, controlled him, died suddenly. For over 20 years, Mills had been more than a manager. He had been a shield. Without him, Tom Jones was exposed. For the first time, his son Mark stepped in and took control of the career. It was a strange reversal. The boy born when Tom was 17 was now steering the man who had never learned to slow down. Mark didn't see a fallen legend. He saw unfinished business. Instead of chasing old formulas, Mark pushed his father somewhere uncomfortable forward into unfamiliar sounds. Younger audiences risk. By 1987, Tom Jones was 47 years old, an age where pop careers usually fade quietly. Then a song arrived from an unexpected place. A boy from nowhere. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't rebellious. But it carried something Tom hadn't leaned into for years. Vulnerability. Tied to a Welsh television series. The song climbed to number 2 on the UK charts. It didn't just chart. It reminded people he still mattered. The performances told the real story. His voice sounded older, not weaker, but weathered, like someone who had survived something and was still standing. It gave him momentum. Then came the decision that should have ended him. In 1988, Tom Jones teamed up with The Art of Noise to record a cover of Prince's Kiss. On paper, it made no sense. A classic soul baritone over cold synthetic beats. A man nearing 50 stepping into MTV's world of youth and image. But that was the point. The track was bold, strange, unapologetic, and it worked. Kiss hit number 5 in the UK, number 1 in several European countries, and exploded on MTV. The video, heavy with visual effects and modern styling, shocked viewers. Tom Jones wasn't chasing trends. He was colliding with them. The song won the MTV Breakthrough Video Award, introducing him to an entirely new generation. Suddenly, he wasn't a relic. He was relevant. But redemption never arrives alone. As his career found new air, his personal life delivered another blow. In 1987, during a U.S. tour, Tom had a brief affair with model Catherine Berkery. It Risu.